How you doing, everybody? My name is Jim O'Neill, and I work for an organisation called Community Dialogue. And we, in conjunction with the International School for Peace Building, we conducted a series of interviews, focus groups, dialogue sessions with a diverse group of groups over the last couple of months. And we decided we would maybe just bring some of the preliminary findings of research and just throw it out to yourselves just to get some feedback as to what you feel it's coming across. I called it City of Cultures, ? Because we're living in a diverse city, and we need to challenge ourselves about what that city what needs to look like, what it looks like now, but what it will look like in the future. And the research was trying to gauge what it's like for people living in this city. Catherine would explain a bit about the groups that were targeted, but as I say, it's a preliminary research at this stage, and really it's just to try to get a feel of what some of the issues are coming across. What we hope to do is do a bigger piece of research over the next year or so, and to target a wider number of groups in the process within the city, and just to try to find out what people's views are, what's their experience of living here, and what sort of future they'd like to see for themselves, their children, and their community. Seamus Farrell is going to give a talk about the City of Sanctuary and the concept of the City of Sanctuary, which has been going now for the last couple of years in the city. And also he'll give a bit of an input about a preliminary report called Targeting Inequalities, and he'll sort of give a context and an overview of what is happening in terms of the various initiatives, potential initiatives that are taking place in this city in relation to trying to make this city a more inclusive place for all. So maybe before we start, can we maybe just do a quick round of introductions and just say who you are? Start yourself.
My name's Brona Shardy, Northwest Women's Collective, and Amelia Earhart Legacy.
Okay.
Jerry Sharkey, Men's Cancer Sports Group.
Conor Murray from the Faction Law Center.
John McCormick.
Maureen Fox, Halliwell Trust. Andrea Bedfield, Jennifer Robinson.
Dr. Singh from Punjabi Cultural Association.
Robin McCarley.
Georgie.
Rachel Hagan, Halliwell Consultancy.
Anna McLaughlin.
Francesca Leone, Junction.
Flavio, trying to have a dialogue from 30 years, so maybe some wisdom to what.
Sierra Parks. Laura Miller.
Matt Jennings from Ulster University.
Jared Dane from Halliwell Trust.
Anne Kelleher, The Junction.
Marie Coy, Creve Women's Group.
Anna Hardy.
Margaret Quigg, Creve Women's Group.
Brenda Donovan, Creve Women's Group.
Francesca White, Derry and Strabane District Council.
Jenny McLeod, the City of Toronto.
Dennis Golden.
John Kelly.
Kevin Burns.
Okay, thank you very much, folks. Just to explain that there are two signing in sheets going around. There are two different sorts of funders who are funding this, and one of the funders, the deadline was yesterday, so that's why it's not an April Fool's joke. It is the 26th of March you're signing this for, okay? Also, after the short inputs from both Catherine and Seamus, we'll have an open discussion on some of the issues raised, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity to have an input yourselves in from that, okay? Thank you. So without further ado, I'll welcome Seamus.
Thanks, Jim, and afternoon, everybody. This is just to generate discussion and thinking, just a small input about two engagements that are located here in this building that are very, very closely related to the City of Cultures and to the fact of the diversity of cultures that makes up this city now, which Catherine has been focusing on. And the first, I say this because many people who are here are familiar already with either or both of these initiatives, and therefore it's kind of to create a context and make connection between the explorations going on here and what Catherine and Jim are bringing to the session. So the first project is City of Sanctuary. In our connections with City of Sanctuary work in other parts, particularly in Sheffield and Leeds and places like that, where there is a big focus on the multicultural dimension of life in those places, our thinking about City of Sanctuary here is that we're trying to explore what is required for this city to be a place where everybody who lives here, both native and recently arrived, so whether people born here or recently arrived here, feels safe, welcome, and included. Now, that at core has to do with a lot of what a lot of good people are trying to do in this city, making this city a place that's safe and welcome for everybody who's here. Whether they're young or old, whatever their cultural identity, and so on. Now, the way that the project is trying to move is towards, first of all, recognizing that for this city to become that kind of city is going to require the involvement, first of all the institutions that make up this city. You know, health, education, those attending to issues of disability, civic and voluntary organizations that are involved with the youth sector, community relations initiatives that have to do with the old tribal divide that bedevils us in this place. And so we're going to be trying to engage with the institutions of health and education and police and churches and whoever else might be willing to be participating, and engaging them in a conversation and having a look at how policies and practices in our hospitals, in our schools, in policing, in churches and whatever, in what way might these policies and practices be depriving people who live here of safety, inclusion, and well-being? And how might policies and practices need to change in order to accommodate the diversity of the humanity that inhabits this city? That's for institutions. I mentioned a number of them: businesses, churches, social services, health, education, etc. Now, there's also a question for us, every one of us, as an individual here. And we in the project City of Sanctuary are asking these questions, trying to get us all to think these questions. In what way, through my attitudes and practices, might people who are living here in this city be lacking in safety, inclusion, and well-being? Because really it is the business of us all. And how might we need to change our attitudes so that everybody who lives here right now can be and feel safe, protected, and included? Because a fact, and whether we're talking about a little city here or the global world, the fact is my security, my well-being is tied up with the well-being of everybody else. If somebody is not secure, then I cannot be secure. That's the nature of the world that we live in. Okay, that's City of Sanctuary as quickly as I can. The other project I want to mention is a research project called Targeting Inequalities that is being conducted from here with support from a foundation called the Young Foundation. Young doesn't relate to age, it relates to a man who was very instrumental in setting up, for example, the Open University in the UK, and it's the Young Foundation is to his memory. Can I mention that the research project located here in this city, also in Fermanagh, and I think in the Lisburn, Lurgan area, What do they mean by inequalities here? What they mean is more than financial, more than economic. It refers to inequalities at the level of ethnicity, gender, belief, sexual orientation, in short, all inequalities. And the fundamental principle, the basic core value in this research is that, as I've said already, inequality, wherever there is inequality, it impacts on us all. And put positively, a society in which everyone experiences inclusion and equality is fundamental to the well-being of us all. Okay, now initial research has been done by Liam Campbell. I don't think Liam is able to make it here today, but I just want to give a very brief summary of the findings that he has come up with through dialogue and conversation all over this city with individuals and with groups. First one is, in conversation he talks about with the taxi driver, and he says, they're telling us there's an awful lot more mental illness in this city than is known about. Trauma. And issues that certainly have a lot to do with the legacy of the conflict, no question, but also more than. He has been finding out that this city has issues around suicide, depression, loss of meaning, loss of hope, loss of purpose. And a lot of that stuff is transferring and finding expression in the health clinics and psychiatric services of this city. Duplication. An awful lot of people being very busy doing a whole lot of useful things, but one of the problems with a lot of the good work happening in this city is that it's splintered, it's fragmented, it's not joined up. And there's a plethora of initiatives for addressing issues, but they tend to be tripping over one another, even disempowering one another. So what's being discovered is the need for joined up, and I'm not talking about joined up thinking and talking, but joined up doing. So that's emerging. Another one is debt. And he said, behind the apparent affluence in many parts of this city, behind the apparent affluence, there is screaming problem in many cases. Now, Catherine's work is on the multicultural dimension. Note, interestingly, Liam has come up with significant observations around the traveller community here as kind of the largest single ethnic minority community. And among the things that has been found is, for example, some of them might want to try and get a driving license to drive their high-ace vans. In order to get a license now, you need to be literate. There's a problem of illiteracy in the travels community, which totally inhibits one of them, getting a driving license. That's just an example. And then, if you like, overarching, I think, young people. Issues of young people with no stake in this society, alienated from society, and feeling that they don't have a future. And that related to issues of antisocial behavior and so on. Questions being asked about young people coming out of an education system with nothing, not even the ability to write their name. So there are issues there. Now, that's negative. Positive. What he has found from his conversation is there's a real appetite in this city for doing something about these things. A real appetite for change. There's an acknowledgement that there's a lot that's not working, but that people are up for dreaming of a better future, and therefore there is the resource with which to tackle these problems that I've talked about. And they want to start by talking about these things. And that's the why of this meeting, and that's what Jim and Catherine have enabled to happen here. Maybe just by way, Liam and this Targeting Inequalities project hasn't come to any conclusions yet, but what has, I think, emerged from what I've already said is that some kind of conclusions, there's important learnings. First of all, that it is everybody's business. This city will be such a place of equality and well-being to the extent to which everybody gets stuck in to do something about it. My well-being and that of my children is tied up with the well-being of everybody else and that of everybody else's children too. So let's think societally. We need to have a focus in addressing the needs of our city on the next generation, youth. Not exclusive, but a big, big focus. And this building is very much about the youth sector. Social innovation. What to say about that?
We lost,
Pardon? Oh, sorry. How did that happen?
social innovation.
And we have one more. Oh, yeah, that's it. Thanks. Thank you. What to say? I'm not saying that we are not hoping for inward investment into this city. We do, and we need to, their efforts need to be made. But our world is changing, and we cannot depend on this place becoming a place where multinationals might decide in the future to locate. Somebody has said that the center of gravity of the earth has shifted. The Western world was at the heart of the city for the last several thousand years. Before we're all gone, the heart of the world will be somewhere about the middle of India or China. So that is a factor. The resources, that means that we need to look to the resources that we have here. Our people, our creativity, our enthusiasm, our land, our landscape, or whatever. That's what we will have to live on. Now there's a fantastic initiative happening here called social innovation. And that is about trying not to be dependent on a miracle arrival of millions and billions of dollars from outside, but what we can generate here ourselves. That is our future. We cannot be dependent on the world to look after us. And that has to be done in partnership. Do you remember I said that projects, initiatives, tripping over one another? We've got to sort that out. The future is in partnership. Divided, this city will go nowhere. And of the 11 organizations that are working here is pointing to what can be done in partnership. Here, I believe this place is a space for new things to emerge. And this is the kind of thing we're about today. Okay, I hope I haven't gone too far. Okay, thank you.
If there's any questions or points of clarifications or comments, we'll maybe leave them till after Catherine's input, and then we'll have an open discussion, okay? So I'm going to introduce Catherine Quinn here now to talk about the piece of research that was carried out. I would like to acknowledge Derry City Council, by the way, who provided the funding for that. They had some funding that they were able to make available over the last month. It was quite a tight schedule, so therefore the project itself, the research, was quite limited because of that. And as I say, we want to sort of develop that research into a wider piece over in the near future to cover a wider range of groups as well. So Catherine's going to give an input now, just a flavour of some of the issues that came across.
So as Jim says, it would be impossible for me to give you a complete picture of the issues that I have come across in the communities of which I worked with. So for the purposes of this presentation, there have been some common threads, and we have pulled those common threads together. But it really is a talking point, and it is just a snapshot And as Jim says, there is much more work that needs to be done and carried out. So just to give you context, the project overview. So it was a joint venture with Community Dialogue and the International School for Peace Studies. The scope of the project was looking at the historical, current and changing challenges facing communities in Derry, Londonderry. Listening and understanding community issues, and that has been really important. Actually sitting with the communities, feeling where they're at and really listening to what their issues is has been really, really important. Providing a platform to articulate the diverse voices within our community. And again, that platform is very, very important because there are a lot of communities who feel very much isolated. So for someone to come in and spend time and really show an interest, that was very, very important to them. So the project objectives: to listen to the diversity of views of various communities in Derry, Londonderry. Each event created an opportunity to gauge the public opinion on a wide range of issues affecting the communities. Again, the extent of those issues is too wide and too varied to, get into depth in this for a 10-minute presentation. But it'll just give you a flavour, and then you can maybe explore, because I know there are some people from the community groups that I have been consulting with, and you can get a better insight through the dialogue process afterwards. It was to allow participants to feel heard. Again, in all the work that I do, that is one of the fundamental, it is so important to actually sit with someone or a group and be heard. There is something very nurturing and powerful in that, and that in itself has the power to create shifts. It was to enable participants to have their say on how these challenges might be addressed. So looking at what messages they want to send out, what is it, what are their burning issues, and what are their challenges, and how might we all together, as Shima says, come up with a strategy for working towards our vision, our dreams and our shared future. So the aims of the project are valuing people, creating opportunities for dialogue, celebrating diversity, because the world would be a very boring place if we were all the same. And there's lots of beauty in the diversity of this city. So the feedback I have broken down into the following categories: community positive feedback, community negative feedback, law and order, political, social, and education. Now, there was a wide range of issues, some overlap in those, and Seamus has discussed some of the inequalities experienced by communities in these various areas. Again, there isn't the time here to go into them in any great detail, but it's just a flavour. So the community positive, and these are just taken, all my notes were taken verbatim from the participants. I felt that was really important to represent their voice exactly as it was spoken and articulated. And that will go into a final report when this is all evaluated and written up. So relationships have improved somewhat, but there are still underlying tensions. The Peace Bridge has been a positive, and they would have spoken about how that has helped with people transitioning from the water side to the city side. The City of Culture has also been described as a positive. People will change things, but not monuments. There's a reduction in fear levels around the Troubles, but a different fear exists now. And it's related to antisocial behaviours and the rise in antisocial behaviour. There's greater pride in community. And ethnic groups have been a strong part of the life in the city since 1935. Community negative, poor policing and justice system. There's a fear culture, and again, antisocial behaviour is part of that. The amount of drugs available, there are great concerns in the community about the level of drugs. Anger and lack of community support. Lack of provision and care for senior members of our society. The voice and presence of the Chinese and Indian communities are not often listened to or acknowledged. trust in the political system has diminished somewhat. Perceptions of law and order. So poor community support again. And again, these are common threads that have been taken. I really would have needed some sort of super duper app that could collate it all. But even that, I don't think it could have been condensed into 10 minutes. Communities are fearful of the youth of today. Upturn in drug and substance abuse. Drug dealers more prevalent in communities. Trust in the system is poor. Vandalism, muggings and petty crime are on the increase. Attacks against women also have been, that is a concern in communities as well. And it's something that's on the increase. Political perceptions. There's no real community representation in the current political arena. The NHS welfare budget cuts leading to poor community care. Politicians cannot reach agreement on any community issues. No shared vision between the political parties. No effective leadership. New council structure has the potential to exclude more than include. And then if we just look at social, unemployment is high, job opportunities poor. No investment of any significance. Poor parental controls. Colour of skin, potential discrimination. Elderly under more pressure than before. Much higher levels of debt. Again, Seamus pointed to debt in his presentation. And lack of awareness on mental health issues. Again, another significant, a lot of the communities are saying that there is not enough awareness or education around mental health. And waterside area neglected, city side looked after. With regard to education, health education is poor, and that is around drug addiction, smoking, eating, so more awareness around those types of issues. Self-esteem needs to be nurtured and taught in schools is another thing that kept presenting, and the same for life skills educations. The communities would like to see more of that type of life skill input in their education. Low levels of achievement of education in the PUL community. And not enough about our culture and history being taught. So, to summarise now, I have put this picture here deliberately so, and you can see it's the most beautiful wee flower that has grown amidst the rocks. And very simple, learn from yesterday, live for today, and hope for a better tomorrow. So if you look at that picture, again, you can maybe consider some of these as talking points for your dialogue. But that, to me, sums up the work that I have done in the communities. They feel like they are a lone voice, struggling to break through in their area, to bloom where they are planted. And so they feel very much alone. And all the communities are saying that. All the different diverse communities are saying that. And so how can we come together in connectedness? How can we tap into our humanity and come together and do something so we don't have this exclusion, so that it is a city of beautiful diversity, that everybody feels safe and where everybody is included and their well-being is important. So I just like this because it just, the challenges, the rocks that, the hardship that this flower had to go through to get to actually bloom is just a perfect representation of my findings in the communities. And there has been many positives, and these communities have said amazing things about the work that has done and how far we have journeyed as a community, but also the message is that there is still a long way to go for us to be part of a shared future. So that is my presentation. I look forward to the dialogue and thank you all very much.
Learn from yesterday, live for today.
Oh, I should leave that maybe.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you, Seamus and Catherine.
can say that the preliminary set of findings from research. Other person, any questions? Any points of clarification? Questions?
Catherine, I'm going to ask you, maybe it's the way I read this or interpreted this, but one of your findings there said communities are fearful of the youth. Can you elaborate on that, or what
Yes, again, that is just a snapshot. That has been expressed in the communities, that there is a fear of the youth, and it's linked to antisocial behaviours. But I know that the youth community have an answer to that, and that's what this project is all about. And it's about dispelling some of the myths. You know, we're going to have difficulties around every community and every way of engagement, but it's about dispelling some of the myths, and it's not all specific to the youth community, but some communities have expressed that. This is not my view, but this is just an expression. This is what some of the communities have expressed, that they have some concerns around the antisocial behaviours that the youths are engaged in, and they feel that they don't you know, respect seniors, and that they would be fearful, and you know, but I also know that that's not, you know, that's not all youth can be bundled into that bracket.
Also, Catherine was hoping to talk to a youth group last week, but it wasn't able to happen.
Yeah.
She's talking to them tonight.
I've had some conversations with the leader of that youth group, and I know that that will be a fruitful session, because they will get their opportunity to express, and I think that's really important. That's really important.
I was wondering too, as well as fear of the youth, fear for the youth.
There is some of that as well, John. Yes, the youth are very much our future, and a lot of the communities are also saying that they are our future, and we need to be looking after them, and we need to be putting into them, and you know, we need to be looking at why some youths are starting to engage in antisocial behaviour, and so that definitely is another issue for sure.
That's the difficult challenges
That's-
facing young people.
Yes, that's right.
Rather than seeing young people just as troublemakers.
Yes,
but
yes,
people who are confronted themselves.
exactly. And
with
it's about,
difficulties.
yeah, it's about creating that understanding, you know, and maybe a dialogue needs to be happening with the communities and the youth, you know, and maybe they all need to be in that together.
Very much.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Flavio?
Because I have an experience that mirrors 100% of what you're telling us today here. I won't be able to bring the experience out now here today. It's a long story, but to make it short, a few years ago I was living in an area there where there was a lot of youth about place. I was visiting this area very often because my girlfriend was living there, so I wasn't actually living myself, but I would have been going to the
Yeah.
place all the time. The youth became interested in me as a different person, as a foreigner, and then they began transforming their interest into not having a chance for a conversation with me. They transferred that into being a bit quickly,
Yeah, yeah,
and then that transferred that quickly became harassment.
mm.
So I was harassed for a couple of years, and three years after, my girlfriend, because of me being the target of the discrimination and attacks every day, she had to leave the actual house. She had to move away. I was white. This was never addressed because I was white, but that wasn't my concern. Although the kids were seeing me with a beard, so they're calling me being maybe of Indian origin.
yeah,
What I did was took care of the kids. I was afraid of them because of we were targeted, so we were targeted, every day. So I was afraid, but I wasn't afraid in that way that I couldn't go out and speak to them. So I went out and spoke to them, and they told me, Flavio, they actually bombarded me with questions of all sorts. They were very curious.
mm.
So I understood that behind their attitude there was just a need for connection and curiosity to know who I was and what I was doing there.
Yeah.
I talked to them and I asked them, what do you like to have here? Would you like to have a place to be together and grow something together? Because they didn't have anything, only fields.
Mm. Mm.
And in that moment, they actually, that connection sparkle something in them. They were happy to speak to me. They're completely different.
Yeah.
They were from here to here in a matter of 2 minutes. You know, kids have this capacity of change in almost instant. They can be, you know, they can turn happy and positive people in a matter of seconds. As soon I caught that, because I couldn't be in the street all day talking to them, they turned back to the same attitude and behavior. And eventually my girlfriend decided to leave the area because she couldn't afford to have me coming in every day, call Paki this or polish that, and you know, damage the properties and everything. So there was a bit of an issue with that. But I never was afraid of the kids. I actually felt sorry for them. But I was actually victimized by the people that I went to talk to, which was the people in charge of the place, the police, and the parents of the kids as well. I was vilified and victimized, and they were trying to smear me to move the fault away from themselves. The kids are not the problem, it's what's behind them.
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much for
It's
sharing.
amazing because I took the same picture last year of a sprout, a wee
Yeah,
green
that's-
grass coming
yeah.
off the tarmac.
Yeah,
Same
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Flavio. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Flavio, for sharing that
Sorry,
with us.
No, that's
no, you're okay. Thank
it's,
you.
It's very
Thank you.
good that you share that, because it really is about the dialogue and creating the connection. That is the most important thing. We can't have understanding if we don't ask, you know, if we don't create the dialogue. And a lot of the behaviours are symptomatic of underlying issues.
Correct.
Okay, anyone else? Seamus, you mentioned ineffective institutions, and the institutions you listed were public institutions which would be shared by everyone. But there are institutions in the city and in Northern Ireland which are not public and are one-sided. Have you addressed those?
Yeah, you're talking about institutions within the community and voluntary sector?
No. Well, specifically I'm thinking of the loyal orders.
Yes.
Have you addressed those as institutions?
What do you mean addressed, Dennis? Because they are part of the package that we inherit.
Yeah.
And community dialogue is about engaging in conversation. And as a matter of interest, there's a very significant piece of work emanating from here in partnership with the University of Ulster, which is bringing together all of those organisations that are into commemorating and memorialising. Do you know, alongside our landscape here, we have a memory scape, do you know, of memorials to this, that, and the other thing. And we're having a very useful dialogue around the fact that while individual agencies are right to pursue their interests, that there's a societal responsibility which doesn't often get addressed. You know, that trying to encourage the idea of orders of either tribe being not just focused on their sectional interests, but on the well-being of the total society. And that's 3 two-day workshops coming up shortly.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
I think also to clarify, Dennis, that the work that Catherine and Craig Barr, who's been doing work with her, has been working with a whole range of groups to date. But obviously, as I said, they need to extend it out to other groups, including the loyal orders as well. Hopefully to have a session with that constituency also, so we want to have as many people as possible. So that hopefully will be a target group for the future as well.
Yeah, but these institutions, and then the more recent one, the Ulster Scots movement,
Yeah.
they're more or less cementing division. You know, they haven't created it, but they're holding fast to these divisions. They're not prepared to let go of these identities and divisions.
I think rather than being judgmental about any of the institutions, Dennis, we would, in community dialogue, are about engaging in respectful conversation and believing in the power of that.
We don't judge what people say. We allow them an opportunity to speak. All people may not agree with what they say, but it's an opportunity for people to have that dialogue within a safe environment to do so.
But you are communicating with them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How are you dealing with the problem of inequality? Because you're moving out of the local community to Westminster and to those groups that are outside, even geopolitical issues, you know, that reverberate back in here again. You know, there's no one to disagree with anything you said there. But I love that. But the reply you're only going to get from them all is, we don't have the money.
We
We don't have the money.
we don't have the money
We
yet.
don't have the money,
Mhm.
therefore we can't do anything about it. That's too bad. And, you know, I mean, I think probably is good in the sense of being aspirational, but until you actually crack the economic situation, or until some way that log jam is banned, is sort of solved, I think you're putting your head up against a brick wall, especially with the youth. What is there for them?
Yeah, like whether at a global level or at a local level, there is a narrative that goes around about the rising inequality between rich and poor and the inequalities between people. Tough. Well, sorry, but I am not accepting that it's just tough. I declare it to be unfair. And if that leads us into very radical rethinking of the political and economic, of the way that this city and this world is being managed in economic and political terms, well then that's the task ahead.
And just,
I think, sorry,
sorry,
go ahead.
just on the back of what Seamus was saying, he's talking about the economics and the political aspects of it, but I mean, and it's very apparent in the communities that I work with, that I would be very, very reluctant to dismiss the impact of small acts of kindness or, you know, moves in communities between individuals. They are powerful. And so we may not have the funding or the money, but there are still things that we can do.
There is a feminist anthropologist who has a lovely saying, never doubt that a small group of people, committed people, can make a difference. In fact, it's the only thing it ever has. So it's in the strength of a belief in the power of what Catherine's talking about.
When you were talking earlier, Seamus, about the city of sanctuary,
Yeah.
I heard on the radio in the car earlier on this morning, Joe Nealis, who used to run Madigan's Bar, talking about, it was a BBC programme getting people talking, and it was just a 5-minute slot, and he I'd heard of his reputation as being very generous, gracious, welcoming, well-run bar with good music and so on. And he said that when he was a young man, he had to search for work in Belfast, and he worked in a bar there, and there was a notice in the bar that set the key for how he operated. And the notice in the bar was, all we serve here is civility, service, and comfort. And that was what he wanted. And he took care of his clients. He made sure they got home safe. If he thought they were having too much, he would have a wee quiet word with them. You know, that kind of thing you can't legislate for.
No.
You can't legislate for it. And it's that small, unremembered acts of kindness and of love that transform a society as well.
That's right. And that's, sorry Jim, you know, when I'm sitting in the communities and they're discussing their heartfelt concerns, the very fact that you sit and really listen to them and give them the voice and the platform for that voice means so much, you know, and that, you know, understanding that is created in that dialogue can ripple out and have massive effect.
Yeah, just conscious that we're running out of time. Has anybody who hasn't spoken yet like to say, make a comment or a question?
Could I make a quick one? I'm very saddened as a mother and a grandmother at what seems to be the lack of communication with young ones who have all these virtual friends, but they have no friends. I'm not saying them all now. They can't seem to be able to have a conversation, or they just, to me, they're isolated in this terrible world of social network.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
there's something to be said
Mm.
for it, okay,
Yeah.
but there's a lot against it for these
Mm.
young ones. They just, you know, and I'm talking from, well, not
Yeah.
family
Yeah.
experience, but young
Yeah.
ones that I know.
Yeah.
And the other just point is that what saddens me, because of my age probably, is there seem to be the total lack of responsibility that parents have
Mm.
for their kids. And I think children need to be supervised and they need to be chastised, for the want of a better word.
Mm.
And this isn't happening. And
Yeah.
the poor young people, God
Yeah.
help them.
Again, those two issues that you've just mentioned are something that have come up with the community groups. They have expressed those exact concerns, just articulated in a similar way to you've just articulated. And again, it's all about understanding and creating a dialogue and the platform for that educative awareness to be, you know, talked about. You know, and I'll be going to the youth group tonight to do the dialogue with the youth group, and I have no doubt they'll have their story to tell, and it's equally as valid and equally as important.
Seem to be just like loners. You know, every place you go, they're sitting like this, going like this here, and they're no conversation. Of course, when their parents are doing it as well.
I think along with the narrative that Catherine has spoken about of communities being afraid of young people, the other narrative is the reality that beyond the macho image, you know, where they come across to adults as Rottweilers and pit bulls, is massive insecurity and fear. They are a fragile identity.
Yeah, but I would even say, you know, you saw the picture, the youth they have their own challenges, they have their own experiences, and they're trying to work their life out and their journey, and you know, we should be supporting them and helping them on their way, because they are our future. And so that's really important, that we ask the questions. We ask them, what is it you need? How are you feeling? What's going on in your world? We will never know their world unless we step into it, and it's the same across the board. It's across every community, even, you know, every individual. That's how we make connection, by asking, tell me, you know, it's not what's your name, you know, you tell me your name, it's Seamus, it's who are you?
That's right.
It's who are you?
But you need to care, and if the first people that don't care are actually in the family, how the community can care of this youth. And then again, when we talk about, on the back of what the last 5 voices have said, when you're talking about not having money, you're actually saying, I don't care about this really, but if there is a money and someone is doing something with some money, it's fine. Actually, looking for money somewhere, I think, most of the time, I'm not trying to, I know they are a necessary mean to a good end or good plan, but most of the time the community doesn't realize that just going out to the door and speaking with these people. If I've done this, and I was the foreigner that was actually victimized and attacked every day, and why the people next door never, you know, have done the same, to go out and speak with these boys. I had a generation in front of me. There were 8, 9, 12, 11, 16, 17, all sexes. And it's really about caring. It's not about money. And then the money that might even come from the crowds. In fact, there is crowdfunding for this as well. So I don't think so. The money are actually, you know, the focus.
Okay, again, I'm just conscious of the time. Is there any pressing issues any other issues that have come up for people that people want to raise questions about? So could I ask if somebody else first, Dennis? Anyone else? Yeah.
I've got another issue to raise. I think all the issues that have been raised are more than pertinent and also, as you say, global as much as local. All of these things to do with alienation within new technologies, and everybody feeling precarious no matter how secure they imagine they used to feel. But just as a sort of a suggestion of something else to do, when I was working in Newcastle, there was a movement there, Newcastle upon Tyne, to declare Newcastle. I think it is officially now a city of sanctuary. And part of supporting that process was within the Festival of the Northeast they had there, we put on an event called Searching for a City of Sanctuary, which provided a platform in terms of a performance space And there were different groups, including Lawnmowers, Learning Disability Theatre, and Freedom from Torture, and the West End Refugee Centre, and the Cyrenian Shelter for Homeless People, and so on. And we created a kind of a large-scale festival kind of event, which was not putting on a show so much, although there were some groups who did music from their original countries and so on, but largely this kind of thing of telling stories, telling their own story in a very relaxed kind of environment within a space that was regarded as neutral. And I think that was a positive move towards it, because as you say, people want to be heard, people want to create a platform for sharing, but if they're only speaking to you or to each other, and they're speaking about everybody else in suspicious or hostile or nervous terms, then it's not actually happening. That people are listening to the other side. And it's very difficult to say, get a large group of young people into a room with a large group of older people and a large group of Protestant Unionist loyalists into a room with a large group of nationalists to hear each other. And if you did, they might not listen very much. But if you create a kind of a cultural event, like an engaged cultural event, not parachuting in somebody who's getting paid a fortune to try and browbeat hundreds of local people to participate free, but an actual event that showcases the interests and experiences of local people, it could contribute to creating this kind of thing. And it is a global movement, so I think you can then connect with other cities other than Leeds as well. And
That creativity, the use of the arts is something that Creative Community Dialogue has started doing over the last couple of years, using other methods like drama, music, and photography.
That's my field. This is particularly significantly, and the ethics and the aesthetics of it were very, very different from most of what I've encountered.
You need to talk.
Definitely.
I'm very much about involved in the arts and making connections.
Sorry, John, you want to say
I was just
something?
going to say that I suppose only in the recent few weeks ago, excuse me, there wasn't really so much of a talking thing, but the situation with the temple brought people in from here, there and everywhere. And since that, there's another guy who's come up with this idea, only seen it on Facebook this morning, about releasing lanterns across the city and trying to get everybody to get involved in it. So for those of you that are on Facebook, check out, I don't know how you would go about it or whatever, but it just seemed a fantastic idea. So there are different options. I think there's a lot of time, it's basically, I would get confused, because I think you hear all this about people having nothing, but you know, there's a time where it's like iPads and iPods and iPhones and smart pads and everything else. I mean, you go back 100 years, what did people have 100 years ago? We were happier people, so I think there's conflicting things going on there.
Yeah, there's a balance to be found in that, because we are in the modern times now of new technology and advancement, but there also are the need to look at the traditional values, you know, and some of the communities would have expressed that they don't see children playing on the streets anymore, and you know, there's no sense of community, but we all have a responsibility to create that.
I think that might be a good place to
Well, you want to just one last word here?
Is there any initiative to counter the gang culture in the city? It seems to cause an awful lot of problems.
Sorry, what was the start of your question?
The gang culture.
Any initiative to counter gang culture?
I wouldn't be qualified to speak on that, but I know that that is another issue that has come up in the communities, and it's possibly something that could be explored further. But it definitely has come up in the consultations with the communities.
There seem to be an awful lot of problems with gangs.
And there's a fear, that's part of the fear as well. And that's in the antisocial behaviour bracket as well. And I'm conscious that this lady here...
Actually, it wasn't a question, it was just, well, actually it was a question. I know that he was talking at the beginning about realizing that the center of the universe is no longer in the West. And I really believe that. It's in China somewhere now. And I worked with, when I was in college, a large proportion of American Indian kids, and of course we all know what happened to them. They have the largest incidence of suicide in the United States in terms of youth. They are tremendously, there's a large proportion of them in prison for violent activity. A huge proportion of them into drugs and heavy drugs, heroin and cocaine addiction and alcohol. Large proportion of them are juvenile alcoholics. We're talking 12, 13 years old and already hardcore. And you know, it's a tremendous sense of hopelessness. They know that no matter what they do, there's nothing for them out there. They also have a lack of education and a tremendous resentment to anyone who has more than they do. I mean, I had one kid look at me and say, you know what? You're sitting here and you're talking to me, and what you're going to do is you're going to get in that fine car and you're going home to a lovely, you're going to sit your big white ass down on a chair and eat a lovely meal, and you're going to wipe your face and watch a large screen TV. Guess what I go home to? We have nothing in common, and there's nothing you can tell me going to make it any different. And you know, it's kind of a capsulization. It's a closure. You know, there's me and there's you. But until we start addressing the fact that they don't want your job at Pound World for 20 hours a week, and ASDA isn't going to give them a future, and there's nothing actually, and throwing money at rich people to come here is never going to happen. We tried it in the States. No one came. They just took that check and deposited it in an offshore account. You know, you need to start looking at those things, you know, and you need to start realizing that it isn't only a lack of education, it's also a tremendous lack of resentment because they have nothing and they see somebody having a little bit of something far greater. I've also had kids tell me, you know what, prison's great. I had a regular meal and I don't have to listen to my old lady screaming at me about where the welfare check went.
Yeah, but the point is, you know, in all of this, we're not trying to fix it. We won't fix it. It's just about asking the question, what is your world? You know, so it doesn't matter what they tell me. It's, if that's your world, that's your world. I want to hear what your world is.
But I think, you know, in terms of understanding where they're coming from.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the key, and that's what makes the connection.
Feeder, grassroots feeder, like Matt was saying, feeder for the people.
Yeah.
Arts.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Susan, we could go on for another 2 hours here.
I know, and it's always that it happens every week, almost every week. The conversation kind of starts to heat up, and then everybody's like, right, oh. And you know, I'm really sorry we can't talk any longer, but that was really good, and the conversation is definitely getting started.